Can a powerful man who chose pride over love ever truly come back from his mistakes? Stay until the end to find out. The knock came at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, soft but insistent. Maya froze mid-step in her small but cozy living room, her heart doing that strange flutter it always did when unexpected sounds interrupted the evening routine. Through the frosted glass of her front door, she could make out a tall silhouette, broad-shouldered and eerily familiar in a way that made her stomach drop. Her 4-year-old twins, Zara and Elijah, were sprawling on the carpet with their coloring books, completely absorbed in their world of crayons and imagination. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the doorknob. Something in her gut told her that opening this door would shatter the peace she'd fought so hard to build. She turned the lock and pulled the door open. Time stopped. Standing on her doorstep in an expensive black suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent was Jin-woo Park, her ex-husband. The man who had ripped her heart out and left her bleeding 5 years ago. The Korean mafia boss who had chosen power, prestige, and his mistress over the woman who had loved him with every fiber of her being. But it wasn't his presence that shocked her into silence. It was his position. Jin-woo was on his knees. His perfectly styled black hair was disheveled. His usually cold, dark eyes were red-rimmed and desperate, and his hands were clasped together like he was praying to a god he'd never believed in. "Please," he whispered, his voice cracking in a way she'd never heard before. "Please, Maya, give me a second chance." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to slam the door. She wanted to scream. She wanted to ask him how dare he show up here after everything, after the humiliation, after the night she'd spent sobbing into her pillow while pregnant and alone. But before she could form words, small footsteps pattered behind her. "Mommy?" Zara's sweet voice called out. "Who's at the door?" Elijah appeared beside his sister, his curious brown eyes peering around Maya's legs at the stranger kneeling on their porch. Both children had her rich, dark skin and beautiful, tight curls, but their eyes, those deep, soulful eyes, were unmistakably Jin-woo's genetic signature. Jin-woo's gaze locked onto the children, and something shattered across his face. Recognition. Grief. Devastating realization. "Mommy?" Elijah asked innocently, tugging at her sleeve. "Who is that man?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Maya watched Jin-woo's composure crumble completely, watched him realize that his own children didn't know who he was, watched the full weight of his choices crash down on him all at once. And in that moment, Maya knew she had to tell the whole story. The story of how they'd met, how they'd loved, how it had all fallen apart, and how she'd built a new life from the ashes he'd left behind. If you're already feeling the weight of this moment, drop a comment below. Let me know. Are you Team Maya, or do you think Jin-woo deserves a chance? 6 years earlier, Maya had been a 24-year-old graduate student in Seoul, studying international business on a scholarship that had been her ticket out of a difficult childhood in Atlanta. She'd been working part-time at an upscale hotel lounge, serving drinks to wealthy businessmen and trying to make her stipend stretch far enough to cover both tuition and rent. Jin-woo had walked into that lounge on a rainy October evening, surrounded by men in suits who moved with the kind of controlled violence that made experienced servers nervous. But Maya had never been one to intimidate easily. When he'd ordered his whiskey in perfect English with just a hint of a Korean accent, she'd met his eyes directly and smiled. "Rough day?" she'd asked, setting down his drink. He'd looked surprised that she'd spoken to him at all. "You could say that." "Well, this should help," she'd replied, then moved on to serve other customers. Most women threw themselves at Jin-woo Park. Maya had learned this later. He was handsome in that sharp, dangerous way that made smart women cross the street and reckless ones lean closer. But Maya hadn't known who he was that night. Hadn't known about the Park family's iron grip on Seoul's underworld, about the nightclubs and protection rackets and carefully laundered money flowing through legitimate businesses. She'd just seen a tired man who looked like he needed his drink and his space. That's apparently what had intrigued him. He came back the next night. And the next. Always alone, always sitting in the same corner booth, always ordering the same whiskey. On the fourth night, he'd actually smiled at her. "You're not from here," he'd observed. Atlanta, Maya had confirmed. "Been in Seoul for 6 months now. You speak Korean. Enough to get by. Enough to know when someone's talking about me," she'd added with a knowing look that made him laugh. A genuine, surprised sound that seemed to startle even him. They'd talked for hours that night after her shift ended. He'd walked her home through the neon-lit streets, and Maya had felt something she'd never felt before. A connection that went beyond attraction, beyond the obvious chemistry that sparked between them. When he'd kissed her for the first time outside her apartment building, gentle and questioning and almost reverent, Maya had known she was falling for someone complicated. She just hadn't known how complicated. Their relationship had unfolded in secret for 3 months before he told her the truth about who he really was. They'd been lying tangled together in his downtown penthouse, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "There's something you need to know about me," he'd said quietly. "About my family." Maya had lifted her head to look at him. You're married. No. He'd almost smiled. Nothing like that. But my family, we're not exactly legitimate businessmen. And then he told her everything. About his father's organization, about the businesses that were fronts, about the violence and the power and the complicated web of loyalty and fear that held his world together. He'd told her that he was being groomed to take over when his father stepped down, that he'd been born into this life and had never known anything else. Why are you telling me this? Maya had whispered. Because I'm falling in love with you, Jinwoo had said simply. And you deserve to know what that means. Maya should have run. Every rational part of her brain had screamed at her to get out while she still could. But she'd looked into his eyes and seen something she recognized. Someone who'd never had a choice about the circumstances they were born into. Someone trying to navigate an impossible situation. I'm falling for you too, she'd admitted. That had been the beginning of their real story. They'd married quietly 4 months later in a small ceremony with no guests. Just the two of them and a judge who'd asked no questions. Jinwoo had wanted to protect her from his family's scrutiny, from his mother's inevitable disapproval, from the dangerous politics of his world. The plan had been to eventually make it public once he'd solidified his position. For 2 years, Maya had lived in a strange limbo. She was Mrs. Park in private, Jinwoo's secret wife, the woman he came home to when he could slip away from family obligations and business meetings. She dropped out of her graduate program to be available whenever he needed her, had learned to live with the unpredictable schedule and the nights he couldn't explain where he'd been. She'd told herself it was enough because when they were together it was magic. Jinwoo was different with her. Softer, more vulnerable, more human. He talked about the future, about eventually stepping away from the family business, about the life they could build together. When things settle, he'd always say, when I've secured our position, when my mother isn't so hostile to the idea of me marrying outside our circle. Just give me time. Maya had given him time. She'd given him everything. The first crack had appeared about 18 months into their marriage. Jinwoo had started staying away longer, coming home smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. When she'd asked about it, he'd grown cold. I have obligations, he'd said tersely. Business dinners. Family events. You know I can't bring you to these things yet. When? Maya had pressed. When will I stop being your secret? When you stop asking me every damn week, he'd snapped, and the venom in his voice had made her step back. He'd apologized later, of course, brought her flowers, made love to her with desperate intensity, whispered promises into her skin, and Maya had forgiven him because she'd loved him and because she'd believed in those promises. But the pattern had continued, long absences followed by intense reunions, coldness followed by passion, distance followed by desperate declarations of love. Maya's friends from her graduate program had started asking questions she couldn't answer. Her family back in Atlanta had grown suspicious about why she dropped out of school and why she was so vague about her life in Seoul. She'd felt herself shrinking, becoming smaller and quieter, molding herself into whatever shape would keep Jinwoo coming back. Then she'd started hearing the rumors. This is where things get really complicated. Don't click away now. The betrayal is just beginning. The rumors had started as whispers in the hotel lounge where Maya had picked up a few shifts again, needing something to fill the endless hours when Jinwoo was away. Seoul's high society was smaller than it seemed, and gossip traveled fast through the service industry. Did you hear about Jinwoo Park? One of the other servers had said during a break, not knowing Maya's connection to him. Apparently he's been seen all over town with Soo-yeon Han. You know, the fashion designer? They say she's gorgeous. Maya had felt her heart stop. Seen together how? Like together. Fancy restaurants, gallery openings, his arm around her waist. My cousin works at this exclusive club in Gangnam, and she said they're there every weekend. Real cozy, if you know what I mean. Maya had gone home and confronted Jinwoo that night. He denied everything at first, told her the rumors were just business gossip, that Soo-yeon was the daughter of an important ally, and he was required to escort her to certain events. Required? Maya had repeated, her voice shaking. You're required to have your arm around another woman. It's complicated. Jinwoo had said, and there had been something in his tone. Defensiveness mixed with guilt. That had told Maya everything she needed to know. Are you sleeping with her? The pause before he answered had lasted an eternity. No, he'd finally said, but they'd both known it was a lie. Things had deteriorated rapidly after that. Jinwoo had stopped even pretending to prioritize Maya. He'd started staying at his family's estate instead of their secret apartment. When he did come by, it was usually late at night, usually after drinking, usually for sex that felt more like claiming territory than making love. Maya had known she should leave, but she'd been paralyzed by a toxic combination of love, hope, and sunk cost fallacy. She'd given up everything for this man. How could she walk away now? The night everything had shattered completely had started like so many others. Jinwoo had called her around 10 p.m., his voice tight with stress. I need to see you, he'd said. Can I come over? Of course, Maya had replied, pathetically eager for any scrap of his attention. But when he'd arrived, he hadn't been alone. Soo-yeon Han had been with him, draped in designer clothes and dripping with the kind of confident beauty that made Maya feel instantly inferior. She'd been tall where Maya was average height, pale and delicate where Maya was brown and curvy, sophisticated where Maya suddenly felt hopelessly out of place. "What is this?" Maya had asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jin-woo had looked exhausted, defeated. "Maya, we need to talk." They'd all sat down in Maya's tiny living room, the apartment Jin-woo paid for but rarely visited anymore. And the surreal nightmare had unfolded. "My mother knows about you," Jin-woo had started. "She's known for a while, and she's given me an ultimatum." Maya's hands had clenched in her lap. "What kind of ultimatum?" "Either I end this arrangement with you and pursue a proper marriage with someone suitable, or she'll remove me from the succession entirely. She'll give everything to my younger brother." "Arrangement?" Maya had repeated, the word stinging like acid. "Is that what our marriage is to you?" "An arrangement." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean, Jin-woo? Because it sounds like you're here to tell me you're choosing your mother's approval over your wife." Soo-yeon had laughed, a delicate, tinkling sound that had made Maya want to throw something. "Oh, he didn't tell you. Jin-woo and I are engaged. Have been for 2 months now. His mother arranged it." The room had started spinning. "Engaged? You're engaged to her. It's political," Jin-woo had said weakly. "Her family controls the ports. It's a strategic alliance." "We're married," Maya had shouted, standing up abruptly. "We're legally married. Or does that not matter when it's inconvenient? Our marriage was never registered with my family," Jin-woo had said quietly. "In their eyes, it doesn't exist. And in this world, what my family says is what matters." Maya had stared at him, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. He wasn't the man she'd fallen in love with. Or maybe he was exactly that man, and she'd just been too blinded by love to see his weakness, his willingness to sacrifice her the moment it became difficult to keep her. "So that's it?" she'd asked. "You're just going to discard me? Pretend these 2 years never happened?" Jin-woo had stood up then, and for a moment, Maya had seen real pain in his eyes. "I don't want to do this, Maya. But you have to understand." "What do I have to understand?" "That I'm not good enough, that I'm the wrong color, the wrong nationality, the wrong class, that everything you promised me was a lie. It's not about that. Then what is it about?" Maya had demanded. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're choosing power and this woman over the person you promised to love forever." Soo-yeon had stood up smoothly, placing a possessive hand on Jin-woo's arm. "Darling, this is clearly becoming too emotional. We should go." The way she'd said darling, the casual ownership in her touch, the dismissive way she'd looked at Maya. It had all been designed to cut, and it had worked. Jin-woo had pulled away from Soo-yeon's touch, but not forcefully enough to convince Maya of anything. "Maya, please try to understand. I'm doing this for both of us. If I lose my position, I can't protect you, the world I live in. It's not safe for someone without power. I don't need your protection," Maya had said, tears streaming down her face now. "I need your loyalty. I need you to choose me." There had been a long, terrible silence. Then Jin-woo had said the words that had destroyed everything. "You're holding me back." Maya had actually stumbled backward as if he'd physically struck her. "What did you just say?" "This life you want. The normal marriage, the public relationship, the simple future. It's holding me back from what I need to do. From who I need to be. I can't be soft. I can't afford weakness. And loving you." He'd trailed off, shaking his head. "Loving you makes me weak." Soo-yeon had smiled like she'd won a prize. "Get out." Maya had whispered. "Maya, get out," she'd screamed, her voice breaking. "Get out of my apartment, get out of my life, and don't ever come back." Jin-woo had hesitated, looking like he wanted to say something else, but Soo-yeon had already been pulling him toward the door. At the threshold, he'd turned back one last time. "I'm sorry," he'd said. "No, you're not." Maya had replied. "If you were sorry, you'd stay." And then he'd left, walking out into the Seoul night with his new fiancée on his arm, leaving Maya alone in the apartment filled with the ghost of their life together. She'd stood there for a long time, too shocked to move, too devastated to cry anymore. When she'd finally been able to think clearly enough to act, she'd pulled out her phone and booked a flight back to Atlanta. She'd started throwing clothes into a suitcase, ready to run as far and as fast as she could. That's when she'd noticed the home pregnancy test sitting in her bathroom drawer, the one she'd bought a week ago when her period was late. The one she'd been too scared to take because she'd sensed things were falling apart and hadn't wanted to complicate everything further. With shaking hands, Maya had taken the test. 2 lines. Pregnant. She'd sunk to the bathroom floor, the positive test clutched in her hand, and laughed until she cried. Because of course she was pregnant.
Of course, the universe would add this cosmic joke to her nightmare. For a long moment, Maya had considered calling Jin Woo back, telling him about the baby, seeing if it would change anything. But then she'd remembered the cold calculation in his eyes, the way he'd weighed her against his ambition, and found her lacking the casual cruelty of bringing his new fiancé to end things. No. She wouldn't tell him. She wouldn't give him another chance to choose power over her. Over them. She wouldn't let her child become a bargaining chip in his political games or an inconvenient secret to be hidden away. Maya had made a decision right there on that bathroom floor. She was done being Jinwoo Park's secret. She was done shrinking herself to fit into his world. If he wanted power so badly, he could have it. She'd take something far more precious. Subscribe now if you're invested in Maya's journey. The next part of this story will break your heart and then slowly put it back together. 3 weeks later, Maya had been back in Atlanta, living in her older sister Keisha's spare bedroom and trying to figure out how to navigate pregnancy while emotionally shattered. The first trimester had been brutal. Morning sickness made worse by heartbreak, hormones making her cry at random moments, exhaustion so profound she could barely get out of bed. Keisha had been her rock, asking few questions and offering unconditional support. That man wasn't worthy of you anyway, she'd said firmly when Maya had finally told her the bare bones of the story. Good riddance. You and this baby are better off without him. Maya had wanted to believe that, but the truth was messier. She'd still loved Jinwoo desperately, still found herself reaching for her phone to call him, still dreamed about him coming after her and begging for forgiveness. But he never called. Never texted. Never showed any sign that he even noticed she'd left Seoul. The silence had hurt worse than any words could have. At her 12-week ultrasound, the technician had smiled and delivered news that had made Maya's already complicated situation exponentially more so. Congratulations. You're having twins. Twins. 2 babies. 2 lives depending entirely on her. Maya had driven back to Keisha's house in a daze, the ultrasound photos burning a hole in her purse. That night, she'd stared at the grainy images for hours, trying to reconcile the fear and the wonder. She'd been terrified, overwhelmed, grieving, and absolutely alone.
But as the weeks had passed and her belly had grown, something had shifted in Maya. The babies had become real to her, not just as abstract consequences of her failed marriage, but as actual people she was going to meet and love. She'd started talking to them, promising them that even though she didn't have much, she'd give them everything she could. You're going to be okay, she'd whispered to her growing belly. We're all going to be okay. It had been a lie at first, but Maya had repeated it so many times it started to feel like truth. The pregnancy had been complicated. Her blood pressure had spiked dangerously in the 3rd trimester, landing her on bed rest for the final 6 weeks. Money had been impossibly tight, even with Keisha's help and Medicaid covering the medical bills. There had been days when Maya had wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake, if she should have stayed in Seoul and fought harder for her place in Jinwoo's life. But then she'd remember the way he'd looked at her that last night. Like she was an obstacle to be removed rather than a person to be loved. And she'd known she'd made the right choice. The twins had arrived 4 weeks early via emergency C-section when Maya's blood pressure had spiked to dangerous levels. She'd been terrified, drugged, and alone in the operating room when they'd pulled her babies out one by one. It's a girl, the doctor had announced, and Maya had heard her daughter's first cry. And another girl, the nurse had corrected a moment later, confusion in her voice. Wait, no. Boy. It's a boy. Twins. A boy and a girl. Perfect and tiny in hers. They'd placed Zara on her chest first, all 6 pounds of her, wailing and red and absolutely beautiful. Then Elijah, slightly smaller at 5 pounds 8 ounces, quieter but with eyes that had seemed to look right into Maya's soul even though she'd known newborns couldn't really see yet. Hi, babies. Maya had whispered, tears streaming down her face. Hi, I'm your mommy. And I promise I'm going to love you enough for 2 parents. She'd meant it with every fiber of her being. The first year had been survival mode. Maya had moved into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, working from home doing freelance translation work while the twins napped, surviving on coffee and determination and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that becomes its own kind of normal. Keisha had helped when she could, but she'd had her own family and her own job. Maya's mother had been dealing with her own health issues and couldn't offer much beyond occasional phone calls. Maya had been essentially alone with 2 infants who tag-teamed crying and never seemed to sleep at the same time. There had been nights when Maya had sat on the bathroom floor, listening to both babies scream and wondered how she was going to survive the next 5 minutes, let alone the next 18 years. But somehow she had. Day by impossible day, she'd figured it out. She'd learned to nurse both twins at once, to survive on 3 hours of broken sleep, to change diapers with one hand while warming bottles with the other. She'd learned that it was okay to cry in the shower, and okay to let the dishes sit dirty for days, and okay to feed her kids frozen nuggets for dinner when she was too exhausted to cook. She'd learned to be enough. By the time the twins were 18 months old, Maya had found a rhythm. She'd built a solid client base for her translation work, enough to pay rent and bills and occasionally buy herself something nice. She'd made friends with other single moms at the neighborhood playground. She'd created a small, stable life that didn't include Jinwoo Park or his dangerous world. She'd almost convinced herself she was fine. Drop a like if you're proud of Maya's strength. And stay with me. This story is about to take another turn. That's when Marcus had entered her life. Maya had met him at the twins' daycare during pickup one random Tuesday afternoon. He'd been there collecting his nephew, a cheerful 3-year-old who'd apparently befriended Elijah in the playground. The boys had been holding hands and babbling at each other in that nonsensical way toddlers did, refusing to be separated. "I think our kids are best friends now," Marcus had said with an easy smile. "I'm Marcus, by the way. Maya. And that's Zara over there too. They're twins. Twins. Wow! You must have superpowers." Maya had laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in what felt like months. Some days it feels more like barely surviving than superpowers. They'd ended up talking for 20 minutes in the daycare parking lot while the kids played, and Maya had been struck by how easy it was. Marcus wasn't trying to impress her or get something from her. He was just there. Present. Kind. "My sister's a single mom too," he'd mentioned casually. "I help out with my nephew when I can. I know it's not easy." Something in the way he'd said it, with genuine respect rather than pity, had made Maya's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. They'd run into each other several more times over the following weeks, always at the daycare, always brief but increasingly comfortable conversations. Marcus had worked as a middle school teacher, coached basketball, and had the kind of steady, grounded energy that Maya had found herself drawn to without meaning to. She'd been careful not to read too much into it. After Jinwoo, Maya had built walls around her heart that she'd had no intention of dismantling. Marcus was just a friendly acquaintance. Nothing more. But then the twins had gotten sick. Both of them, simultaneously, with a stomach virus that had turned her apartment into a disaster zone of vomit and diarrhea and screaming children. Maya had been on day 3 of crisis mode, barely functioning on no sleep and pure adrenaline when her doorbell had rung. Marcus had been standing there with bags of groceries, children's Pedialyte, and soup. "Heard through the daycare grapevine that your kids were sick," he'd said. "Thought you might need supplies." Maya had nearly cried. "You didn't have to do this." "I know. I wanted to. Can I help?" And just like that, he'd rolled up his sleeves and stepped into the chaos. He'd cleaned while Maya tended to the kids, made the soup while she gave them baths, took over with Elijah so Maya could focus on Zara. He'd stayed for 6 hours, asking nothing in return, just helping because he'd seen someone who needed it. When the twins had finally fallen asleep that night, Maya and Marcus had sat on her couch in exhausted silence. "Thank you," she'd whispered. "I don't even know how to thank you properly." "You don't have to thank me, Maya. You're doing an amazing job with those kids. Everyone needs backup sometimes." It had been such a simple statement, but it had cracked something open in Maya's chest. Jinwoo had always made her feel like loving him was a burden she should be gratefully tolerated. Marcus made her feel like she was someone worth showing up for. They'd started spending more time together after that. Casual at first. Playground meetups, coffee while the kids played, shared meals that were more practical than romantic. Marcus had never pushed for more, seemed content to simply be present in whatever capacity Maya needed. With Marcus, there had been no drama, no secrets, no power games, just steady, reliable kindness. The twins had adored him from the start. Elijah had started running to Marcus at pickup time, demanding to be thrown in the air. Zara had started bringing him her favorite books to read. Slowly, without Maya quite registering it happening, Marcus had become woven into the fabric of their daily lives. It had taken 8 months before anything romantic happened between them. They'd been at a park, watching the twins play on the swings, when Zara had fallen and scraped her knee. She'd cried and run to Marcus instead of Maya, burying her face in his chest while he'd soothed her with practiced ease. Maya had watched them, and something had shifted in her heart. This man had shown up for her children again and again, had been patient and kind and present, and asked for nothing in return. "Can I take you to dinner?" Marcus had asked later that evening after they'd gotten the kids settled. Like, actual dinner. Just the two of us. A date. Maya had felt panic flutter in her chest. "Marcus, I don't know if I'm ready for." "No pressure," he'd interrupted gently. "If you're not ready, that's okay. But Maya, I need you to know that I'm here because I want to be. Not just for the kids. For you too." She'd said yes. Their relationship had unfolded slowly, carefully. Marcus had understood that Maya carried wounds that needed time to heal, had never pressured her for more than she was ready to give. He'd been patient when she pulled away, understanding when she needed space, steadfast when she tested whether he'd actually stay. And he had stayed. Through Maya's panic attacks about commitment, through her fears about introducing a man into her children's lives, through the complicated grief she still carried for Jin-woo, Marcus had stayed. By the time the twins turned 3, Marcus had become dad in all the ways that mattered. He'd been there for first steps and first words he hadn't witnessed originally, for doctor's appointments and birthday parties, for 2 a.m. fevers and playground triumphs. He'd learned how Zara liked her sandwiches cut in triangles, and how Elijah needed his blanket positioned just right at bedtime. "Daddy, look." Zara had shouted one day at the park, using the words so naturally that Maya's heart had stopped. Marcus had looked at Maya, uncertain. "Is that okay?" Maya had watched her daughter beam at Marcus, had seen the pure love and trust in her eyes, and had nodded, "Yeah, it's okay," because it was. Marcus had earned that title through showing up, through choosing them every single day, through loving her children with a kind of steady, unconditional devotion their biological father had never offered. Jin-woo had chosen power. Marcus had chosen them. The twins had never asked about their biological father. They'd been too young to understand that most kids had 2 parents, and their world had felt complete with just Maya and Marcus in it. Maya had known that conversation would come eventually, but she'd let herself enjoy the peace while it lasted. For 3 years, they'd built a beautiful, simple life. Marcus had proposed on the twins' 4th birthday, right there in the middle of their chaotic, frosting-covered apartment with Zara and Elijah watching with wide eyes. "I want to make this official," he'd said, down on one knee while 2 4-year-olds giggled. "Will you marry me, Maya? Will you let me be their dad for real?" Maya had said yes, crying happy tears for the first time in years. They'd been planning a small wedding for next spring. Everything had been perfect. Everything had been finally okay. And then Jin-woo had shown up on her doorstep, shattering her peace like he'd shattered everything else in her life. Comment below if you think Jin-woo has any right to be in their lives, and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Present day. Maya stood frozen in her doorway, the weight of 2 realities colliding. Jin-woo still on his knees, looking nothing like the powerful man who discarded her. The twins behind her, innocent and confused, seeing their mother's past materialize in a stranger's face. "Mommy?" Elijah tugged her sleeve again, more insistent now. Who is that man? Why is he crying? Because Jin-woo was crying. Actual tears streaming down his face as he stared at the children he'd never known existed. The children who called another man dad. The children whose entire lives he'd missed. Maya's voice came out cold, steady. "Go back inside, babies. Mommy needs to talk to this man for a minute." "But," Zara started. "Now, please." The twins obeyed, but Maya could feel their curious eyes on her as they retreated to the living room. She stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door mostly closed behind her. "Get up," she told Jin-woo quietly. "You look ridiculous." He stood slowly, and Maya could see he'd aged in 5 years. New lines around his eyes, gray creeping into his temples, a weariness that went bone deep. Good. She hoped every sleepless night had carved itself into his face. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I've always known where you were," Jin-woo admitted. "I've been keeping tabs on you since you left Seoul, making sure you were safe." Rage flashed through her. "You've been watching me for 5 years and never once reached out. I thought it was for the best. I thought you'd moved on, built a new life. I didn't know about." He gestured helplessly toward the house where the twins were. "They're mine, aren't they?" "No," Maya said flatly. "They're mine. I carried them, birthed them, raised them. You're just the sperm donor who happened to be my husband once upon a time." Jin-woo flinched like she'd slapped him. "Maya, please, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need to explain." "Explain what?" "How you chose your mistress over your wife. How you called me a weakness. How you didn't even notice when I left the country." Maya's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "What could you possibly explain that would make any of that okay? Soo-yeon betrayed me," Jin-woo said urgently. 6 months after you left, she and her family tried to stage a coup. They tried to take over my father's organization. She was using me the entire time, feeding information to her father, positioning herself to seize power. "And?" Maya asked coldly. "You want sympathy? You want me to feel sorry for you?" "No, I want you to understand that you were right about everything. I chose wrong.
I chose power and status over the only real thing in my life, and it cost me everything. My father was killed in the fighting. I lost half the organization. I barely held on to control, and the price was everything. My mother, Jinwoo's voice broke. She took her own life. The shame of what happened, the loss of my father, she couldn't bear it. Maya felt a flicker of sympathy despite herself. She'd met Jinwoo's mother only once, briefly, and the woman had looked at her with such cold disdain it had felt like being evaluated and found wanting. But suicide. That was tragic regardless of their history. I'm sorry for your losses, Maya said, meaning it. But I don't understand why you're here now. Because I lost everything, and in losing everything, I finally understood what mattered. I spent 3 years cleaning up the mess I'd made, 3 years wishing I'd chosen differently. And then I hired someone to find out what happened to you. Really find out, not just surveillance reports. And they told me about the twins. So you came here to what? Claim them? Disrupt the life I've built. I came here to beg your forgiveness, Jinwoo said. To see if there was any chance, any possibility that you might let me try to make this right. There isn't, Maya said immediately. We're done. Wah, Jinwoo. We were done 5 years ago when you walked out with your fiancé. I know, but Maya, they're my children. They're not. Maya interrupted. They don't know you. They have a father who's been there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every milestone. A father who chose us every single day. That man is their dad. You're nobody to them. The truth of it seemed to break something in Jinwoo. He sagged against the porch railing, looking defeated in a way Maya had never seen. Please, just let me meet them. Let me know them. I'm not asking to be their father, I'm just asking not to be a stranger. Why? So you can ease your guilt. So you can feel like you tried. Because they're part of me. Jinwoo said desperately. Because I've made so many mistakes, but maybe I can do this one thing right. Maybe I can know my children, support them, give them something. They don't need your money. Maya cut him off. We're doing fine. I can see that. I can see you've built a good life. I can see they're happy and healthy and loved. And I'm grateful for that, truly. But Maya, please. Don't punish them for my mistakes. I'm not punishing anyone, Maya said. I'm protecting them. From the chaos of your world, from the confusion of suddenly having a biological father appear, from the inevitable heartbreak when you decide they're not worth the inconvenience again. That won't happen. You don't know that, Maya said firmly. You don't get to make promises anymore, Jinwoo. You broke every promise you ever made to me. The door opened behind Maya. Marcus stepped out, his presence solid and protective. He'd clearly heard enough of the conversation to understand who Jinwoo was. Everything okay out here? Marcus asked quietly, his hand settling on Maya's lower back. Jinwoo's eyes tracked the gesture, the easy intimacy of it, and something like agony crossed his face. You must be Marcus. And you must be the ex-husband, Marcus replied evenly. The one who broke Maya's heart and left her to raise twins alone. I didn't know about the twins, Jinwoo said. Would it have mattered? Marcus challenged. Would you have stayed if you'd known? Or would you have found another excuse to choose yourself? The question hung in the air, and Jinwoo couldn't seem to find an answer. I think you should go, Marcus said. You've upset Maya, and the kids are inside getting worried. This isn't the time or the place. I'm not going anywhere until... Yes, you are, Maya interrupted. Because I'm asking you to. I'm telling you to. Get off my porch, Jinwoo. Get out of my life. Again. Maya, please, no, she said. And the finality in her voice seemed to reach him in a way nothing else had. I spent 2 years begging you to choose me. I'm not doing this again. My answer is no. Jinwoo looked between Maya and Marcus, seeming to finally understand that he'd lost. That he'd lost 5 years ago and there was no getting it back. No undoing the choice he'd made. If you ever change your mind, he said quietly, pulling a business card from his pocket and setting it on the porch railing. My number, for anything, anything at all. Then he turned and walked down the steps, climbed into a sleek black car Maya hadn't noticed before, and drove away. Maya stood there trembling, years of buried anger and hurt and grief surging up all at once. Marcus pulled her into his arms and she let herself break down in a way she hadn't since those early days alone with the twins. You did good, Marcus murmured into her hair. You were so strong, I don't feel strong. Maya sobbed. I feel like I'm 17 again and my world's falling apart. But you're not 17. You're a grown woman who's built an incredible life for herself and her children. He doesn't get to take that away from you. Not anymore. Maya pulled back to look at him, this man who'd shown her what love was supposed to look like. I love you. You know that, right? I know, Marcus said, wiping her tears with his thumbs. And I love you. All of you. Past, present, everything. You don't have to be perfect or have it all figured out. You just have to be you. Inside, they could hear the twins starting to fuss, their patience with being separated from their mother wearing thin. Maya took a deep breath, wiped her face, and straightened her shoulders. "Let's go back inside," she said. "Our kids need us. Our kids. Not hers, not his. Ours." That simple possessive had never meant more. If this story is hitting you in the feels, make sure to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't go anywhere. We're not done yet.
That night, after the twins were asleep, Maya sat on the couch with Marcus and told him everything. The whole story, from beginning to end, things she'd never fully explained before. The depth of her love for Jin Woo, the completeness of his betrayal, the terror of being pregnant and alone, the slow rebuild of her life. Marcus listened without judgment, holding her hand and letting her get it all out. "Do you still love him?" he asked when she finished. Maya considered the question honestly. "I love who I thought he was. The man who made me laugh, who held me during thunderstorms, who promised me forever. But that man either never existed or he died when he chose power over us. The man on our porch today. I don't know him, and I don't want to. What if he comes back? He will," Maya said with certainty. "Men like Jin Woo don't give up easily. He'll try again." "And what will you say?" "The same thing I said today." "No." Maya turned to face Marcus fully. "I meant what I told him. You're their father in every way that matters. You're the one who's been here. You're the one they love and trust. You're the one who earned it." Marcus's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Those kids are the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though they're not biologically mine, I love them like they are. And I love you for trusting me with them. The question is," Maya said softly, "are you okay with all this? With the fact that their biological father is apparently back in the picture? With the complicated mess that is my past?" "Maya, everyone has a past. Yours just happens to involve a Korean mafia boss, which I'll admit is more dramatic than most. But it doesn't change anything for me. I knew you had an ex. I knew the twins had a biological father somewhere. The fact that he showed up doesn't change what we've built together. He's not going to disappear quietly," Maya warned. "Jin Woo was many things, but he was never a quitter. If he's decided he wants to be part of their lives, he'll be persistent. Then we'll deal with it together," Marcus said firmly. "You're not alone anymore, Maya. You don't have to fight these battles by yourself." The relief Maya felt at those words was profound. For so long, she'd been the only adult making decisions for her children, the only one responsible for everything. Having a true partner, someone who shared the weight, it made all the difference. They stayed up late that night, talking through scenarios, making plans, discussing boundaries. By the time they went to bed, Maya felt more centered, more prepared for whatever came next. What came next arrived 3 days later in the form of a delivery. Maya had been at the park with the twins when she'd gotten home to find a massive package on her doorstep. Inside were two of everything: designer clothes in the twins' exact sizes, expensive toys, art supplies, books, and a note in Jin Woo's distinctive handwriting. "I know I can't buy your forgiveness or their love, but please let me at least provide for them. Let me give them something, even if it's just material things, please. JW." Maya had stared at the gifts, anger and frustration warring in her chest. This was so typical of Jin Woo. Throwing money at a problem, trying to solve emotional needs with material goods. She'd called him from the number on his business card. "Maya," he'd answered on the first ring, hope clear in his voice. "Stop sending things," she'd said without preamble. "My children don't need your money. They have everything they need. I just wanted. I know what you wanted. But this isn't how it works, Jin Woo. You can't just buy your way into their lives. That's not how parenting works." "Then tell me how it works," Jin Woo had said, a note of desperation creeping in. "Tell me what I can do because I'm lost here, Maya. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it," Maya had said bluntly. "That's what you're not understanding. There's nothing to fix because we're not broken. We're complete without you. But they're my children. Biologically, yes. In every other way that matters, no. They have a father. They don't need another one." There had been a long silence on the line. Then Jin Woo had asked quietly, "Are you going to marry him?" "That's none of your business." "It is if he's going to be raising my children, your children." Maya had laughed bitterly. "Jin Woo, you gave up any claim to them when you called me a weakness and walked out. You don't get to suddenly claim ownership now because your life fell apart. I'm not trying to claim ownership. I'm trying to be part of their lives. There's a difference. To you, maybe. But to me, it feels like you wanting to ease your guilt. You want to feel like you tried, like you're not the kind of man who abandons his children. But you are that kind of man, Jin Woo. You did abandon us. And the fact that you didn't know about them doesn't change that. I would have stayed if I'd known, Jinwoo had said, and Maya could hear that he believed it. Maybe she'd conceded. Or maybe you would have convinced yourself that keeping the pregnancy secret and setting us up somewhere was the responsible thing to do. Maybe you would have had me hidden away like I was before, secret children to go with your secret wife. We'll never know because it didn't happen. Let me prove myself, Jinwoo had begged. Give me a chance to show you I've changed. I don't need you to prove anything to me. Maya had said warily. I need you to accept that this chapter of our lives is closed. I need you to let me and my children live in peace. Our children, he'd corrected softly. And that had been the heart of it, hadn't it? Jinwoo saw them as our children, a connection that bound him to Maya forever. But Maya saw them as her children, the one she'd born and raised and loved with every fiber of her being. The biological connection Jinwoo kept citing felt meaningless compared to the day-to-day reality of parenting. I'm going to donate these gifts, Maya had told him. And I'm asking you again, please stop. Stop sending things, stop showing up, stop disrupting our lives. We were fine before you came back, and we'll be fine after you're gone. I'm not going anywhere, Jinwoo had said. I can't. Maya, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking anyway. Just let me see them. Once. Let me meet my children properly. Let me talk to them. If after that you still want me gone, I'll respect it. But give me that much, please. Maya had wanted to say no immediately. But something in his voice, the raw need in it, had given her pause. She'd thought about Zara and Elijah, about what they might want to know someday about where they came from. She'd thought about the questions that would inevitably come as they got older. I need to think about it, she'd said finally. And I need to talk to Marcus. This isn't just my decision anymore. Thank you, Jinwoo had breathed. Thank you, Maya. That's all I'm asking for. A chance. She'd hung up feeling unsettled and confused. Part of her wanted to slam the door completely on Jinwoo's face. But another part, the part that had loved him once, the part that understood the agony of regret, wavered. That night, she'd talked it through with Marcus again. What do you think? She'd asked. Am I crazy for even considering it? Marcus had been quiet for a long time before answering. I think you're trying to do what's best for the kids. That's never crazy. But what if letting him meet them opens a door we can't close? What if they get attached to him? What if he breaks their hearts like he broke mine? Those are all real risks, Marcus had agreed. But Maya, someday they're going to have questions. Someday they're going to want to know about their biological father. Maybe it's better to control that narrative now while they're young than to have them seek him out later when they're teenagers and we have less influence. Maya had seen the wisdom in that, even though it terrified her. And you'd be okay with it? With him being around? I'd hate it, Marcus had admitted with surprising honesty. I'd hate sharing them with him, hate the idea of him thinking he can just waltz back in. But I also know that trying to keep him out completely might backfire. Kids have a way of idealizing absent parents. If we let him in, let them see who he really is, they might appreciate what they have with us even more. Or they might fall in love with the idea of their rich, powerful biological father and decide we're boring in comparison, Maya had countered. Then we trust that we've raised them well enough to know real love when they see it, Marcus had said. We've given them 4 years of consistency and devotion. One meeting with a stranger isn't going to erase that. In the end, Maya had called Jinwoo back and agreed to one meeting, one carefully controlled introduction with her and Marcus both present in a neutral location. One chance for Jinwoo to meet the children he'd never known existed. And if after that meeting I decide it's not good for them, you walk away, Maya had stipulated. No arguments, no gifts, no showing up at our house. You respect my decision as their mother. Agreed, Jinwoo had said immediately. Whatever you want, Maya. Thank you. You won't regret this. But Maya already had regrets. She just hoped they wouldn't multiply. We're heading into the most emotional part of this story. Hit that like button if you're still with me, and drop a comment about what you think is going to happen. The meeting was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at a family-friendly restaurant with a play area. Maya had chosen it deliberately. Public enough to be safe, casual enough not to be intimidating, with enough distractions that the twins wouldn't be forced to focus entirely on a stranger. She'd spent the week preparing the twins as best she could for a 4-year-old's understanding. Remember I told you about Korea, where Mommy used to live? She'd started gently, where they have the pretty buildings. Zara had said excitedly. That's right. Well, when Mommy lived there, I knew a man named Jinwoo. And Jinwoo he's the man who helped make you. Before you were born, before we came back to America. Elijah had looked confused. Like how Daddy helped make us. Maya's chest had tightened. Kind of. But you know how Daddy is Daddy because he loves you and takes care of you every day. Both twins had nodded. Well, Jinwoo is the man who was there at the very beginning, but then Mommy moved away before you were born, so he didn't get to know you. And now he wants to meet you. Why? Zara had asked, direct as always. Because he wants to know the amazing kid you become, Maya had said, keeping it simple. Will he be our other daddy? Elijah had asked. No, baby. You have one daddy, and that's Marcus. Jin Woo is just someone who wants to meet you. Like a family friend. It had felt inadequate, but how did you explain complicated adult relationships and regrets to preschoolers? The day of the meeting arrived too quickly. Maya dressed the twins in their normal play clothes, refusing to make them into show ponies for Jin Woo's benefit. Marcus had taken the afternoon off work and wore his most protective expression. They'd arrived at the restaurant first, claiming a table in the corner with good sightlines. The twins had immediately asked to go to the play area, and Maya had let them, grateful for a few minutes to calm her racing heart. Jin Woo arrived exactly on time. He'd dressed casually too, jeans and a simple button-down, clearly trying not to intimidate. But there was no hiding the expensive watch, the designer shoes, the aura of wealth and power that clung to him like cologne. Thank you for coming, he said quietly, addressing both Maya and Marcus. I know this can't be easy. It's not, Marcus said bluntly. But we're doing this for the kids, not for you. Jin Woo nodded, accepting the hostility. His eyes kept drifting to the play area where the twins were visible through the glass partition. That's them, he asked unnecessarily. Zara is in the pink shirt, Elijah in the blue, Maya confirmed. They're amazing kids. Smart. Funny kind. They have big personalities. They're beautiful, Jin Woo whispered, and Maya could see his hands trembling slightly. They look like you. But their eyes. They have your eyes, Maya acknowledged. And Elijah has your stubborn chin. A ghost of a smile crossed Jin Woo's face. I was a stubborn child too. There was an awkward silence. Finally, Marcus broke it. Ground rules before we do this. 1. You don't overwhelm them with information about who you are. They know you as Jin Woo, a friend of their mom's from Korea. That's it. 2. You don't make promises you won't keep. No, I'll see you again soon unless Maya approves. 3. You keep this light and easy. If they want to play instead of talking, you let them play. Understood? Understood. Jin Woo agreed. I just want to meet them. That's all. Maya signaled to the twins through the glass, and they came running over, flushed and happy from playing. They stopped short when they saw Jin Woo, sudden shyness overcoming them. Zara, Elijah, this is Jin Woo, Maya said gently, the friend I told you about from Korea. Jin Woo, these are my children. Hi, Jin Woo said, and his voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat. It's very nice to meet you both. Zara, always braver, stepped forward slightly. Do you really live in Korea, with all the pretty buildings? I do, Jin Woo confirmed, in a city called Seoul. It's very different from here. What's different? Elijah asked, curiosity overcoming his shyness. And just like that, they were talking. Jin Woo told them carefully edited stories about Korea. The food, the markets, the parks. The twins asked a million questions the way children did, and Jin Woo answered each one with patience and genuine interest. Maya watched him with her children and felt a complicated tangle of emotions. This was the man she'd loved, the one who'd held her through nightmares and promised her forever. But it was also the man who'd chosen wrong, who'd broken her in ways she was still healing from. Watching him now, gentle and kind with the twins, she could see glimpses of the person she'd thought he was. But she could also see the sadness in him, the weight of his regrets, the late realization of what he'd lost. After about 30 minutes, Jin Woo pulled out 2 small wrapped packages. I brought you something, he told the twins. If your mom says it's okay. Maya examined the packages. Children's books, one for each twin, written in both English and Korean. Simple, thoughtful, not ostentatiously expensive. She nodded her permission. The twins opened them excitedly, and Zara immediately demanded that Jin Woo read hers to her. He looked to Maya for permission again, and she gestured to the empty chair. So Jin Woo read to his daughter, this child he'd never known existed, in a blend of English and Korean that made her giggle at the unfamiliar sounds. Elijah climbed into Maya's lap to listen, and Marcus kept a protective hand on Elijah's back. It was surreal. All of them in this strange configuration. Biological father, mother, stepfather, children. Navigating something none of them had a roadmap for. When the story ended, Elijah surprised everyone by asking, Can you read mine too? Jin Woo's face did something complicated. Hope and heartbreak mixed together. I'd love to. The second story was longer, and halfway through, Elijah grew restless and went back to the play area. Zara stayed, completely absorbed in Jin Woo's storytelling. When he finished, she looked up at him with those eyes that were so like his. Will you come back and read more stories? She asked innocently. Jin Woo's gaze shot to Maya, desperate and hopeful. Maya felt Marcus tense beside her. That's up to your mommy, Jin Woo said carefully,
sticking to the ground rules. But I hope so. The lunch wrapped up shortly after. The twins gave Jinwoo enthusiastic hugs goodbye, the way they hugged all friendly adults in their lives. Before running off to burn more energy in the play area, Jinwoo stood to leave, looking emotionally wrung out. "Thank you," he said to Maya and Marcus, "for giving me this. I know it cost you something. Just remember our agreement," Maya said. "This doesn't mean anything beyond today unless I say so." "I know. But Maya. Jinwoo paused, struggling with something. "They're incredible. You've done an amazing job with them. I just wanted you to know that." After he left, Maya and Marcus sat in silence for a long moment. "Well?" Marcus finally asked. "How are you feeling?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "It was harder than I expected, watching him with them. Seeing what could have been if he'd made different choices." "Do you regret agreeing to the meeting?" "No. I think you were right. Better to control this narrative while we can. And it was actually kind of nice to see them learn about Korea from someone who actually lives there. I couldn't give them that connection to that part of their heritage." "So what now?" Maya took a deep breath. "Now we set boundaries. If he wants to be in their lives, it's going to be on our terms, on our schedule, in ways that don't disrupt what we've built. And he needs to understand that he's not their father. You are. He's just someone who cares about them from a distance." Subscribe now if you want to see how this all resolves. And comment below. Do you think Jinwoo deserves a place in their lives? Over the next few weeks, a careful rhythm developed. Jinwoo would video call once a week to read the twins' stories. He sent small, thoughtful gifts, art supplies, books, educational toys, nothing ostentatious, nothing designed to buy affection, just small gestures that showed he was thinking of them. To the twins, he became Uncle Jinwoo, their mom's friend from Korea who told them stories. They liked him well enough, but showed no signs of bonding with him in any deep way. He was just one more adult in their orbit, less important than their teachers or their neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who sometimes babysat. Maya watched carefully for any signs that the contact was confusing or upsetting them, but the twins seemed to take it in stride. Jinwoo was just there, part of the landscape, not particularly special or significant, which clearly devastated Jinwoo, though he tried to hide it. "They don't know me," he said to Maya during one of their brief check-in calls after a story session. "They're polite, but I'm just a stranger to them."
"You are a stranger to them," Maya pointed out. "You've been in their lives for a few weeks. Marcus has been there for years. Of course they're bonded to him and not you. I know. I'm not trying to. I just wish things were different." "So do I," Maya said honestly. "I wish you'd chosen differently 5 years ago. I wish my children had grown up knowing their biological father. I wish a lot of things. But we don't get to rewrite the past, Jinwoo. We only get to move forward. Are you happy?" he asked suddenly. "With him? With your life?" Maya considered the question seriously. "Yes, I am. Marcus is a good man who treats me with respect and love. My children are healthy and thriving. I have work I find fulfilling and friends I care about. It's not the life I imagined when I was young and in love with you, but it's a good life. Maybe even better than what we had could have been." "How could it be better?" Jinwoo asked, sounding genuinely curious rather than defensive. "Because there's no secrets," Maya explained. "No hiding, no shame, no power imbalances. Marcus and I are equals. Partners. He doesn't keep me in the shadows or ask me to make myself smaller. And the twins are growing up seeing a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. That's better than growing up in the chaos your world would have brought." There was a long silence. Then Jinwoo said quietly, "I'm glad you found that. Even if it kills me that I'm not the one who gave it to you." The vulnerability in his voice tugged at something in Maya's chest. "Jinwoo, can I ask you something? Anything. Why now? Why come back now after all this time? What changed?" Another long pause. When Jinwoo spoke again, his voice was raw. "I almost died. About 8 months ago. There was an attempt on my life. A car bomb. I survived, but it was close. And lying in that hospital bed, all I could think about was that I'd wasted my life chasing power that meant nothing. I'd lost my parents, I'd lost you, I'd lost any chance at real happiness. And I thought, if I die now, what would I leave behind? What would matter? And you thought of the twins. Maya guessed. I didn't even know about them yet. But I thought about you. About the life I could have had if I'd been brave enough to choose it. So when I recovered, I hired someone to really investigate what happened to you after you left Seoul. And they found the birth certificates. Twins. Born 6 months after you disappeared. And suddenly I had something worth living for. Even if it was just knowing they existed somewhere in the world, Maya felt tears prick her eyes despite herself. Jin Woo. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me, he interrupted. I'm just trying to answer your question honestly. I came back because I almost lost the chance to come back at all. And I couldn't die without at least trying to see my children. Even if they never know who I really am to them, they deserve to know someday, Maya heard herself say. When they're older, when they can understand, they deserve to know their full story. Will you tell them? Jin Woo asked. When the time comes. Yes, Maya promised. I won't lie to them about where they came from. But I also won't force a relationship that doesn't serve them. If they want to know you better when they're older, that will be their choice to make. That's more than fair, Jin Woo said. More than I deserve. They talked a bit longer about logistics and boundaries and what the future might look like. When they hung up, Maya felt emotionally exhausted but also oddly at peace. She'd spent 5 years running from this conversation from the specter of Jin Woo and what he represented. But now that they'd actually talked, really talked, some of the power it held over her had dissipated. He was just a man who'd made mistakes and was trying too late to make amends. She could acknowledge that without letting him disrupt her life. Marcus found her sitting in the quiet living room, lost in thought. How did it go? He asked. Okay, Maya said. We talked. Really talked for the first time in years, and I think we found some kind of peace with each other. Does that scare you? Marcus asked, settling beside her. A little, Maya admitted. Part of me wants to keep hating him because it's simpler. But the truth is, I don't hate him anymore. I just feel sad for what could have been and grateful for what is. Marcus pulled her close. You're allowed to have complicated feelings about him. He was a huge part of your life once. You're allowed to grieve what you lost while still appreciating what you found. I found you, Maya said softly. I found our family. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, even if it meant having an easier path. I love you, Marcus said simply. I love you too. They sat together in comfortable silence, the sounds of their children playing in the background, the solid foundation of their life together holding firm despite the waves of the past. 3 months later, Maya and Marcus got married in a small backyard ceremony with close friends and family. The twins served as flower girl and ring bearer, delighted to be part of the celebration. Jin Woo wasn't invited, but he sent a beautiful gift, a set of heirloom Korean wedding ducks symbolizing harmony and fidelity, along with a note wishing them happiness. Maya appreciated the gesture, the acknowledgement of her new chapter, the respect for her boundaries. Life settled into a new normal. Jin Woo remained part of the twins' lives in a limited, controlled way. He sent gifts for birthdays and holidays, called occasionally to read stories, and maintained his role as the interesting family friend from Korea. The twins liked him well enough, but showed no signs of seeing him as anything more than a pleasant adult in their periphery. As they grew older, 5, then 6, then 7, they started asking more questions about their family structure. Why don't we look like Daddy? Zara asked one day, comparing her brown skin to Marcus's pale complexion. Because Daddy isn't related to you by blood, Maya explained gently. He's your daddy because he loves you and chooses to be your parent, not because of biology. So who is related to us by blood? Elijah asked, precociously logical as always. Well, me, obviously, Maya said. And there's a man in Korea who's your biological father. But he wasn't able to be part of your life when you were babies, so Daddy stepped in. Is it Uncle Jin Woo? Zara asked with that eerie child intuition. Maya met Marcus's eyes across the room. They'd talked about this moment, prepared for it. Yes, she confirmed. Jin Woo is your biological father, but that doesn't mean he's your daddy. Daddy is the person who's been there for you every day, who loves you and takes care of you. Blood doesn't make someone a parent. Actions do. The twins processed this information with the adaptability of children. They asked a few more questions. Why hadn't Jin Woo been there? Did he not want them? Was something wrong with them? And Maya answered as honestly as she could without burdening them with adult complexity. He made some mistakes when he was younger. Maya explained. He chose his work over his family. And by the time he realized that was the wrong choice, I had already left Korea and come home to America. He didn't know about you for a long time. But he knows now. Elijah verified. Yes. That's why he calls and sends gifts. Because he knows about you now and wants to know you, even though he can't be here in person. Can we still call Marcus Daddy? Zara asked, her real concern surfacing. Of course you can, Marcus answered, pulling her into a hug. I'm always going to be your daddy. Nothing and nobody can change that. The conversation ended there, and the twins went back to playing as if nothing monumental had just been discussed.
But Maya knew this was just the first of many such conversations, that as the twins grew, their understanding would deepen and their questions would become more complex. When Maya called Jin-woo to let him know the twins had been told the truth, his reaction surprised her. "How did they take it?" he asked, voice tight with emotion. "Pretty well, actually. They had questions, but they didn't seem particularly upset. I think having it be a known fact is better than it being a mystery." Did they ask about me? About why I wasn't there?" "Yes. I told them you made mistakes when you were younger. That you chose work over family and regretted it later." "That's generous of you," Jin-woo said quietly. "More generous than I deserve. I told them the truth in a way they could understand," Maya corrected. "When they're older, they can know the full complexity. For now, this is enough. Would it be okay if I wrote them a letter? Something they can read when they're older, explaining my side of things?" Maya considered it. "Yes. But I'll hold on to it until I think they're ready. And Jin-woo, don't make excuses in it. They deserve the truth. I won't. I just want them to understand that not being there was the worst mistake of my life. That it had nothing to do with them and everything to do with my own failings." The letter arrived 2 weeks later, sealed in an envelope marked for Zara and Elijah, to be opened when ready. Maya tucked it away in a safe place. A piece of their history to be revealed when the time was right. We're almost at the end. If this story touched you, share it with someone. And make sure you're subscribed, because I have more stories like this coming. Years passed. The twins grew from curious preschoolers to thoughtful preteens. Their relationship with Jin-woo evolved too. As they got older, they started having actual conversations with him beyond story time. They asked him about Korean culture, about his work, about his life. The calls became less about maintaining a connection and more about genuine interest. When Zara was 12, she asked if she could visit Korea someday to see where she came from. "What do you think?" Maya asked Marcus privately. "I think she's old enough to make that decision," Marcus said. "And I trust that we've given her a strong enough foundation that she won't be swayed by wealth or the novelty of it all." So Maya had called Jin-woo. "Zara wants to visit Korea, to see where her heritage comes from. Would you be willing to show her around?" "With me there, of course." The silence on the other end was so long, Maya thought the call had dropped. Then Jin-woo's voice came through, thick with emotion. "I would be honored." Truly honored. The trip happened the following summer. Maya, Zara, and Elijah. Who hadn't wanted to be left out? Spent 2 weeks in Seoul. Jin-woo arranged everything thoughtfully, showing them cultural sites and introducing them to Korean food and traditions. He was careful never to overstep, always deferring to Maya, always respecting the boundaries they'd established. On the last night of the trip, Jin-woo took them to a traditional Korean restaurant. Over dinner, Zara asked the question Maya had known was coming. "Why didn't you fight for us?" She asked directly. "When Mom was pregnant, why didn't you try to find her?" Jin-woo set down his chopsticks, and Maya saw him gathering courage. "Because I didn't know you existed," he said honestly. "Your mother left Korea without telling me she was pregnant, and I never looked for her because I thought I'd made the right choice in letting her go. I was wrong. It was the worst mistake of my life, but I didn't realize that until years later." "Did you love Mom?" Elijah asked. "Very much," Jin-woo confirmed, looking at Maya with something like regret. "But I loved my ambition more, and I was too proud and too stupid to see what really mattered until it was too late." "Do you still love her?" Zara pressed. "I love who she was," Jin-woo said carefully. "But she's not that person anymore. She's grown and changed and built a beautiful life that I'm not part of. I respect that life and the family she's created with Marcus. But if you could go back, you'd choose her?" Elijah asked. Jin-woo met Maya's eyes across the table. "If I could go back, I'd choose to be brave enough to deserve her, to build a life that could hold both my responsibilities and the family I wanted. But I can't go back. None of us can. We can only choose better going forward." The twins seemed satisfied with that answer, and the conversation moved on to lighter topics. But later, when they were alone in their hotel room, Zara said to Maya, "I'm glad we met him. I'm glad I know where I come from. But I'm also really glad Dad is our dad. Marcus will always be your dad." Maya confirmed. "Jin-woo is your biological father, and that matters."
But Marcus is the one who chose you every day. That matters more. When they returned to Atlanta, Maya realized something had shifted in her. The fear that had driven so many of her decisions about Jin-woo. The fear that he would take her children's love, that he would disrupt their lives, that he would hurt them like he'd hurt her, had loosened its grip. Her children were secure in who they were and who loved them. They could have space for Jin-woo in their lives without it diminishing what they had with Marcus. And Maya could acknowledge Jin-woo's role in their story without letting it define her own. She'd spent years running from her past, trying to pretend it didn't matter. But she'd learned that the past didn't have to control her unless she let it. She could acknowledge what had been, grieve what was lost, and still move forward into a future she was actively choosing. One evening, a few months after the Korea trip, Maya's phone rang, Jinwoo's number. "Hey," she answered. "The twins are at basketball practice if you were calling to talk to them." "I was calling to talk to you, actually," Jinwoo said. There was something different in his tone, lighter, freer. "Okay, what's up? I wanted to thank you. For the trip to Korea, for letting the twins into my life, for handling all of this with such grace when you had every right to shut me out completely." "You're their biological father," Maya said simply. "They deserve to know you. Maybe. But you didn't have to make it easy. You didn't have to be kind about it. You could have poisoned them against me or used them as weapons or made this whole thing miserable. But you didn't, and I'm grateful for that." Maya thought about it. "I spent a lot of years angry at you, Jinwoo, and I had every right to be. But holding on to that anger was only hurting me and potentially hurting my kids. I had to let it go, not for your sake, but for mine. I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Jinwoo said. "But I hope you know that I am truly, deeply sorry for the pain I caused you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I got better," Maya said. "I got Marcus and a life I love and children who are thriving. The path was harder than it needed to be, but I like where I ended up. I'm happy for you," Jinwoo said, and Maya could hear that he meant it. Truly. You deserve all the happiness you found. They talked for a while longer, the conversation easier than it had been in years. When they hung up, Maya realized this was what closure felt like. Not dramatic or explosive, just a quiet settling of old debts, a mutual acknowledgement that they'd both moved on to different lives. That night, curled up with Marcus on the couch while the twins did homework at the kitchen table, Maya felt profoundly grateful for the life she'd built from the ashes of her first marriage. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, noticing her distant expression. "Just how different my life could have been," Maya said. "If Jinwoo had chosen differently, if I'd stayed in Korea, if things had worked out the way I'd once hoped they would, do you wish they had?" Marcus asked carefully. "No," Maya said with certainty. "Because that version of my life wouldn't have included you. And I can't imagine my life without you in it. You saved me, Marcus. Not in some dramatic fairy tale way, but in all the small daily ways that actually matter. You showed me what real love looks like. You saved yourself," Marcus corrected gently. "I was just there to witness it and support where I could. You're the strongest person I know, Maya. We saved each other," Maya amended. "Found each other when we both needed it and built something real together." From the kitchen, Elijah called out, "Mom, I need help with my math homework." And just like that, the moment of reflection passed, replaced by the wonderful mundanity of everyday family life. Math homework and dinner prep and bedtime routines and all the beautiful, boring moments that made up a life well lived. Years later, when the twins graduated high school, Jinwoo sent them each a letter along with their graduation gifts. Maya read Zara's over her daughter's shoulder. "Congratulations on this milestone. I'm so proud of the person you've become, even though I can take no credit for it. Your mother raised you to be strong, intelligent, and kind. Everything I failed to be when it mattered most. As you move forward into college and adulthood, know that you have family in Korea who loves you and is always here if you need anything. But more importantly, know that you have a father in Marcus who has earned that title through years of devotion and love. Honor him, learn from him, and never take for granted the gift of his presence in your life. Wishing you all the best, Jinwoo." Zara had tears in her eyes when she finished reading. "That's really beautiful," she said softly. "It is," Maya agreed. "I'm glad I know him," Zara continued. "But I'm gladder that Dad is my dad. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Maya said, hugging her daughter close. And that was the truth of it. Jinwoo was part of their story. An important part that had shaped who they all were. But he wasn't the story itself. The story was Maya's resilience, Marcus's steadfast love, and the family they'd all built together in spite of the odds. Some men return when it's too late, not because they love you more than they did before, but because they finally lost everything else and have nowhere else to turn. Jinwoo had returned 5 years too late to be a father in any meaningful sense. But he'd returned in time to be something else, a connection to heritage, a lesson in mistakes and regret, a reminder that biology isn't destiny. And maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. Maya stood on her porch years later, watching Marcus teach Elijah how to change the oil in his first car while Zara FaceTimed with friends about college orientations. The life she'd built was noisy and chaotic and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Jinwoo had chosen power and lost everything that mattered. Maya had chosen her children and found everything she needed. In the end, it wasn't about who had shown up first. It was about who had stayed. Who had shown up every day through the boring moments and the hard moments and the beautiful moments? Who had earned the title family through action rather than claiming it through biology? And that was a choice Maya would never regret. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future stories. Drop a comment telling me what you thought. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's possible to build a beautiful life after heartbreak. And remember, some people come back when they lose everything else, but by then, you've already found peace. Choose the people who choose you every single day. Thanks for watching.